Why does TV and movie representation matter so much to minorities? I always thought it was more or less to normalize minority groups in society. So, like if a little white kid grew up seeing a black man as the hero versus always the thug, gangster. They're going to have different perceptions in real life. I grew up in a small town with 0 other black people or minorities at all. So the biggest representation if them was in media. That's always been my take on it, at least. I don't have an issue with different demographics in media as long as it is done organically and not forced. The issue is when people lack creativity and can't be bothered to actually make meaningful change. You see this with petitions and calls to make James Bond black instead of simply creating another agent or making a different series altogether. No. That is not creativity and groundbreaking. That is just laziness and counterproductive, since it makes the case that people will only care about your work of art if you simply change superficial traits about the people in that world. A huge proportion of the real-life LAPD is Mexican American. But when you see the LAPD portrayed on TV, you hardly see any. It would be like a show about the Boston PD that has only 1 or 2 token Irish Americans. Anybody named Sean O'Malley from Eastern Mass would be like, "What the fuck is this bullshit?" Quote, "I'm brown. South Asian descent. I have intense internalized colorism. When I was a child, I wanted to be white when I grew up. I wanted to look like my Barbies. To this day I sometimes look at myself and wish I was lighter." In the 90s and 2000s, there weren't any brown people on North American TV. Especially not children's TV. Between that and my culture prizing lightness, I resented being darker skinned. Imagine if I saw someone like me growing up doing awesome things. Maybe I wouldn't hate the color of my skin so much. But that's just why it's important to me. Obviously by the name, I am of Asian background. I think why movie and TV representation matters to me is, when growing up with this, it influences your thoughts on the world. Growing up, the Asian minority was mostly stereotyped as either martial arts or the nerd. Never got the girl. When our community, everyone's community, is much more than their stereotypes. And I think until now, for my community anyway, a proper representation of this wasn't shown. As for the whitewashing, my opinion is as long as it's played appropriately and well, I'm less prone to care. But when something is meant to represent or reference a rich culture, I think it takes away a chance for that representation to be much more powerful. Tilda Swinton in Doctor Strange as the Ancient One comes to mind, for example. I find it weird how whenever there is a black character in media, they are somehow supposed to represent every black person on the planet. Which is ridiculous. I feel like media only ever portrays ethnic minorities in an American society. I am white. But I don't feel represented when I see a white person on TV because other than skin color, we have nothing else in common. I've never seen my ethnicity and country portrayed in mainstream media. At least not positively. And I imagine a lot of POC feel this way too. Black, Hispanic, Asian, white are huge umbrella terms for literally hundreds of ethnicities, nationalities, cultures, etc. People act like race is all there is to a person's identity, but there is so much nuance there. Why should you feel represented by a person who shares nothing with you other than your skin color? Those are my thoughts. I'd appreciate to hear how people outside the US experience this. As for the topic of race in the US, I really can't speak about this because I don't know. It probably long-term contributes to an overall reduction in unconscious bias against them if their participation is normalized. so a tangible improvement to their lives and, moreover, hopefully a better future for their children. It definitely affects how you and everyone around you looks at the world, whether you realize it or not. I can't speak for the race issue, but growing up I loved playing with more stereotypically boy things. In every commercial for Hot Wheels, Nerf, or something like that was always a boy. And toys themselves like action figures or something were all male. Even as a kid, I very much noticed it and always thought there was something really wrong with me. It told me that those things are meant for boys, not girls. I can imagine a non-white child looking at a set of Barbies and feeling the same thing. I'm also bisexual. This was one where I didn't really realize how I felt about the lack of representation until I got it. It was in the show Brooklyn 99 and one of the characters came out as bi. And it just made me so happy seeing that. It made me feel validated and understood. I definitely understand that there are other very important problems to deal with as well. But representation is still important. It affects how you feel about yourself and how others feel about you. I don't know about you, but not seeing people who looked like me and came where I'm from only be thugs and athletes kinda sets a standard for you when you live in a rough area where the only role models are drug dealers, killers, prostitutes, addicts, and thieves. It's about feeling understood or being bailed to put ourselves in their shoes. Movies based on modern-day life shouldn't always feel as alien as Star Wars. May I ask where you're from? Here's a story from a while ago. I was in the store with my little cousin and we were in the toy aisle. She picked up a Barbie. I asked if it's what she wanted and she asked, "Why don't any of them look like me? I'm not pretty?" It's much deeper than you think it is. We want to be seen. Lots of people form their opinion from what they see on TV. TV has mainly depicted minorities as extreme versions of their stereotypes. E.g., black people are dangerous. There are a lot of people who are sheltered and not exposed to different people or opinions, so this might be the only exposure they have. More representation would mean seeing minorities in roles that shows they are humans and equals, with their own stories, not just a horrible stereotype. Now, I'm not entirely sure why it matters, but for me, when I see a Filipino person on screen I get excited and happy. I am Filipino. IG if they're portrayed right. Then it just makes it better than if it were whitewashed since you're missing that certain aspect. I am not sure if that makes sense, but it's the best I can do. I'm white to be clear, so I can't say firsthand why it matters. But I recently started watching Reservation Dogs. It is a FX TV show about the life of teenagers living on a reservation. It's comedic for the most part but has some serious undertones. And it occurred to me while enjoying the show how completely strange it is to see Native American actors in a show about natives. And was actually surprised that it was written and directed by Native Americans and it was about life in Oklahoma. It is such a good show, and 5 to 10 years ago these directors, writers and actors as well as subject matter would have never been approved, funded or cast that way. It was nice, and I can see the value in representation, especially if I was a Native youth. Because representation matters, and this has been a subject of media, culture studies, sociology research for decades now. We want to see ourselves in all roles and not just as token characters or typecasted characters. We want to feel like humans. Media has been largely male-dominated and white for decades. I'm a woman and I just cannot care for another movie with a white male lead with white woman as the eye candy. I'm sorry, but it's just repetitive and I cannot relate to that. Not to mention how often they touch upon issues that I don't care about or they're straight up being offensive. It's the same with games for me. I prefer games with female leads and I'll always choose a woman over a man if I have a choice. I straight up think that it's ridiculous how some games forced a male lead because men would cry about it otherwise, even though the woman is the much more badass, fitting, has a better VA. Case in point. AC Odyssey and ME. I spent my whole teenage years watching LGBT series and movies. From the beautiful and niche ones to the very trash ones. They made me feel understood. They told me that I exist as a gay boy and that I'm beautiful and strong. They made me dream when I hadn't any hope. They were really important for me and still are. This is the importance of representation in my experience as a gay person. I can't speak for black people or other minorities. But I really think that representation can be vital for a lot of people. Because they can inspire others to do better than they thought they could. Take Nichelle Nichols. Her playing Uhura, a black officer instead of the at the time stereotypical black maid, inspired so many girls to take STEM classes and become astronauts. Mae Jemison, first black woman astronaut, directly credits Nichols as her inspiration. I can't say why it matters to minorities. But as a white dude I can tell you that seeing shows my whole life that feature whites as the main characters reinforces the racist belief that whites are the main people, and everyone else are the other people. There are many white people who will say it's ridiculous that people complain about the ethnicity or race of the actor playing a character, but then watch out how those same folks react when a stereotypical white figure is played by a BIPOC actor. All of a sudden it is out of character or not historically accurate. Representation matters. Maybe not true at the same level to everyone. But sure, for white cishet men who consistently see themselves represented in media, it's not an issue for them at all. Because they have always seen themselves as the default. I've no doubt that they would notice if all of a sudden there were no white cishet men cast in movies, TV, commercials, print ads, etc. People relate to things, issues, people if they see it on TV. There's a strong argument to be made that if American policemen had seen more TV shows with strong central black characters, they would be far less likely to shoot black people when encountering them in stressful situations. Also, as a viewer, if you see yourself, or a representation of yourself, in a program, you're far more likely to feel positive about yourself. From a prejudice perspective, it shows that black people can be more than athletes, criminals. In my country, most people only know black people from media and it shows. For example, I cannot be outside for longer than 15 minutes until someone asks me if I sell drugs because most of media back in the days portrait black people as drug dealer and don't let me start with the N-word. I first thought it does not matter too for my enjoyment, but when I saw movies with well done diversity I really appreciate it, as I can relate to things more.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. EverettDonovan is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.